Well, we're right now talking about the first topic, which is AI and public sector combining to create smart and high-performance governments. Digital and artificial intelligence technology will likely have a substantial economic and social impact, and the public sector is seeking and finding applications to improve services. Cognitive technologies could eventually revolutionize every facet of government operations. This panel discussion will discuss how AI currently operates in the public sector and determine what skills and resources are needed to successfully apply it. Using cognitive technologies to redesign a public sector work, strategic approach how governments are handling cybersecurity in digital era. What are the sectors in government that AI will deeply impact? Also, how important it is to consider data ethics while adopting AI technology, critical infrastructure, protection, predicting and preventing cyber attacks before they occur. How is AI driving cybersecurity? What are the security challenges in the IoT and in its impact, role of AI and big data to drive success? Will AI eliminate jobs, lead to the advent of new one? What are the interesting use cases driven by AI that help strengthen detection and response? And also we're looking at talking about data privacy protection legislations and its impact on cybersecurity landscape in the region. So ladies and gentlemen, we've got with us our incredible panelists who have joined us. First up, we've got Sutovo Wong, Director, Analytics and Information Management, Ministry of Health, Singapore. Well, Sutovo is an analytics CRM and loyalty management specialist with experience stemming across a variety of disciplines, including customer segmentation, predictive modeling, and computer vision, to name a few. We've also got Ben Chua, the Chief Executive Officer of the Cyber Youth Singapore. As the community leader of Singapore's youth in tech, Ben lobbies for a future smart nation with a strong cybersecurity foundation. Well, Ben is somebody who strongly advocates for opportunities for youth to shape the digital future of Singapore. Well, we'll also have Santosh K. Mishra, Commissioner, CEO, Tamil Nadu E-Governance Agency, India, who will be joining us. Well, Santosh is a public policy and a regulatory specialist working in the area of emerging technologies for improved governance and service delivery to citizens. Mr. Mishra graduated from the prestigious IIT Kanpur and later did MS from the University of Minnesota. Last but not the least, we've got our moderator, Dr. Adam Shea, Chief Smart Health Leadership Center, Institute of System Science, National University of Singapore. Dr. Adam has more than 20 years of health informatics, digital health and innovation technologies and business experience. Will be moderating this entire conversation. So thank you so much, Dr. Adam, for joining us and all our incredible panelists who have taken out their valuable time. Thank you so much, Sutova. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us. Over to you and have a great panel discussion. Thank you.
Right. Thanks a lot, Buff, for the kind introduction. I'll take over from here. Yeah. So first thing first, a very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our panel. As mentioned by the host, my name is Adam, and I currently serve as the Chief of the Smart Health Leadership Center over at the National University of Singapore. The panel discussion we're going to have for this session is on AI and public sector, combining to create smart and high performance. And we have with us today some very diverse and high profile panelists. What I'll do is I will invite each panel member to briefly introduce themselves so we can form some sort of connection and their work, particularly with reference to artificial intelligence. with that, I'm just going to go left on my screen, so it's easier. We'll start with Sutowu. Yeah, would you please?
Okay, thanks, Adam. Yeah, so my name is Sutowo. I lead analytics and information management in Ministry of Health Singapore. So essentially, my portfolio covers quite a few things. One of them is analytics strategy and planning, looking at how we should organize ourselves better from people, process, technology perspective in order to optimize our ability to deliver or exploit data to inform our policy formulation, policy review, operations, and also service planning. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is the data architecture and engineering, pulling together our data, structuring it in a way that makes sense or is helpful for our users, be it a policy or ops users in the ministry and beyond. The other one is building the data pipeline to help our data scientists make their work more efficient, so that then that they don't have to spend too much time actually then doing a lot of the data wrangling. The next aspect is really the data science aspect, looking at how then we apply data science techniques and also AI on a lot of the different use cases that we'll identify. And last but not least is around capability development. How do we then come together and build the right competencies in analytics and data science, not just for the practitioners, but also for the non-practitioners, so that we can improve data literacy across the entire public healthcare. So that's my portfolio. Over, back to you, Adam.
Well, that's very interesting, actually. We should have a conversation sometime. So I'm going to continue with the panel. Up next, I'd like to invite Mr. Santosh to introduce yourself and your work related to artificial intelligence. Over to you.
Thank you, Adam, and good morning, everyone. So I'm Santosh Mishra. I am the CEO of Tamil Nadu e-governance agency. This agency is basically owned by government of Tamil Nadu in India, and its responsibilities are for being the channel for entire government to citizen services. It also assists government departments in their various technology needs. So if a department is looking at particular solution, they will want us to come and help them. And third part is it also acts as the technology chief technology organization for government of Tamil Nadu. So we explore all the new technologies which are coming about and coming up, and then see where all they can be employed. So these three roles, G2C services, so we offer about, every year we serve about 10 to 15 million citizens and deliver from about 200 odd government services. All of them are delivered online. So they can access either our portal, or they can actually go to one of the 10,000 plus kiosks we have for delivering government citizen services spread all across the state. Second, as I said, was G2G, which is for helping government departments meet their technology needs. And third one is technology evaluation for government and policy and developing policies. For example, we just launched our safe and ethical AI policy, which is first in India. And we also brought out our blockchain policy. We have also worked on our cybersecurity policy. So these three policies were very recently brought out, and during the discussion, I'll talk about it. So this is primarily what we do at Tamil Nadu e-governance agency, and I'm the CEO of that agency.
Thank you, Santosh. That is actually a very big portfolio you have there. Pretty amazing. Okay, up next we have Ben. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself and your work related to AI?
Right. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. I'm Ben from Cybersecurity Singapore. So I actually lead this charitable national movement, and our sole responsibility actually, is we're actually responsible for building the professional workforce of the future. And we're actually starting with the youth, right? So we cover all things technology, starting from cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, I think, which is the topic we're covering for today's conference. So the interesting thing about my organization and myself is that we are all very young people. We actually just started last year, and a majority of us are under 35. Actually, all of us are under 35. And why is that the case is because we firmly believe that to build a secure and advanced smart nation, we have to involve the people who one day take over that nation, right? So we have to involve people who will be one day maintaining, leading that nation. We have to involve them from the very start, from formulating policies to developing technologies. So currently we have about 900 members, right? And we will grow to about 10,000 strong in 7 years. So my role as the CEO of this organization, I manage day-to-day activities of the organization, budgeting, as well as general youth development and talent development of our future professional workforce. Thank you, Adam.
That sounds very interesting. Yeah.
Dr. Adam, I'm so sorry to cut in. I just would like to inform Ben if he could put on his camera on. I'm not too sure if he's aware of that. Then
right. Okay.
Just request you.
Let me. Yeah. Right. Got it. Can you guys see me?
Yes. Perfect. Yes, we can now. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to cut in.
So sorry about it.
No worries. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So a big thank you to all the panelists for your self-introduction. With that, we're going to go straight into the actual discussion. I'd like to start off by asking Sutau, in your opinion, which government sectors will AI have a direct impact?
Thanks for the question, Adam. There are actually a lot of sectors that we look at. Perhaps I just maybe share a bit more about our national AI strategy, which was launched in 2019. The strategy actually maps out how Singapore will develop and use AI to transform the economy and improve people's life. And we have committed to more than 500 million to fund AI initiatives under our Research, Innovation and Enterprise 2020, or what's termed as RE 2020 plan. So the national AI strategy actually has 3 objectives. One is turning Singapore into a global hub for developing, test-bedding, deploying, and also scaling AI solutions. This includes learning how to govern and manage the impact of AI. Second, the government and businesses to use AI to generate economic value and improve lives. And the third objective is for the society as a whole to understand the benefits, limitation, and the risk of AI, and the workforce to be equipped with the necessary competencies to thrive in an AI-driven economy. So these are the objectives we have set for our national AI strategy. And at the start, we will embark on 5 national projects covering areas of transport and logistics, smart cities and estates, healthcare, education, as well as safety and security. And these 5 projects actually will guide investments in AI research, generate what we call the lead demand to anchor talent and capabilities, and guide how we will build up our supporting digital infrastructure. So for example, in smart cities and estate, people will be able to report municipal issues via chatbot. We also have plans to deploy sensors and AI algorithms to predict maintenance needs in the public housing estates by 2025. In education, there are some very exciting stuff going on. We are piloting AI-enabled automated marking system for English as a start with selected primary and secondary schools before launching in 2022. This will enable us to assess open-ended student responses such as essay and provide a quick feedback automatically, which will be very helpful for our teachers. There will also be more personalized education through AI-enabled adaptive learning system. It actually uses machine learning to tell how each student responds to learning materials and activities. It then recommends a step-by-step pathway, which is customized for each of the students. This will be trial online in our learning portal, which is called Student Learning Space. So for a lot of parents in Singapore, you'll be very familiar with SLS, Student Learning Space. For specific topics in math, we will start to trial this adaptive learning system. So in upper primary and also lower secondary levels. And this pilot will likely be held in 2022 with the aim to launch it in 2025. So these 2 AI systems, automated marking system and adaptive learning system will be expanded to more subjects, hopefully by 20. This is in education. AI, of course, will be used in the management of chronic diseases, and that's in healthcare. I'm not sure whether you heard about this. There's this program initiatives called SINA Plus, Singapore Eye Lesion Analyzer Plus. It is a deep learning system that is jointly developed by SNEC, which is our Singapore National Eye Center, and also NUS, National University of Singapore, where it scans retinal images for signs of 3 diabetic eye diseases. And the capabilities that we are building here will be extended for us to develop a risk assessment model for predicting cardiovascular diseases by 2025. So these are just some of the examples that we have and the different sectors that will be impacted by AI, at least as we actually articulated in our national AI strategy. Thank you.
That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Very interesting sharing. Maybe I'd like to direct the question to Mr. Shantosh. Would you like to share your opinion with regards to the ethics of AI and data? And perhaps you can also share some relevant use cases.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I think Sutovo was absolutely right. For all governments, I think the priorities remain the same. If you look at the sectors, it is health, education, and for a country like India, and I think a lot of other countries, agriculture also is a high priority sector. I will talk about Indian context. One of the challenges which India has, and I think many of the middle income and developing countries have, is there is a huge gap between resources and the demand for those resources. So if you look at education, and I was so happy that Suto was mentioning all these AI-enabled solution for adaptive learning, for customized learning. These are so critical for countries where there is a gap. So if you look at the student-teacher ratio in India versus the world, there is a big gap there. If you look at the number of doctors per 1,000 people per 10,000 population, again there is a gap in this country. If you look at agriculture productivity, it's almost half of what it is in some of the leading countries of the world. So how do you fill this gap? And I think this AI technology has been one of the, in my personal opinion, and I think the countries around the world kind of have started using these technologies to fill up and to improve their service delivery in these sectors. And I think this, if you look at on an average, there was a study I read, a physician in India spends about 25 seconds in their per patient, which is abysmally low. So the question is, can we have AI-based solutions which actually give some sort of preliminary diagnosis, which is then passed on to the physician, so that he or she can actually spend more time on the relevant discussions rather than doing the preliminary analysis. Similarly, adaptive learning is going to really transform the educational scenarios in a country like us. Of course, when you use these technologies, there are a lot of pitfalls we need to be aware of. So if you look at the India story, there has been a lot of background work which has been happening. I think we have the world's largest digital identity program, which is called Aadhaar. So about 1.3 billion people have got their digital identity and biometrics captured. You have, in last 5 years, there has been a tremendous focus on what is called JAM, which is Jan Dhan, is essentially financial inclusion. 50 million new accounts have been opened for people who have been out of the financial sector. And then A stands for Aadhaar, which I talked about, which is the digital identity program. And then the mobile penetration. So India has one of the best mobile penetrations and cheapest data rates anywhere in the world. So on an average, it's 26 cents per GB of data here, whereas it varies for other countries. So given this enablement, or given this foundation which we have, which is digital identity, financial inclusion, and access to mobile connectivity. Put together, there was something very fascinating which came about, which is called UPI, which is United Payment Interface. And this is real-time small payment interbank settlement system. And it's mind-boggling where it has reached. In last, I think it was launched in 2018. In less than 2 years, the number of transactions every month are 1.3 billion transactions. The value which gets transacted is $44 billion every month, which is phenomenal for a country like us. So this foundation is there, which is built on digital technology. Now it is the time to sort of create and harness this and develop AI solutions using these access to internet, access to mobile, having access to financial inclusion, and of course a digital identity. When you try to do this, as I said, there are certain, so for example, we at Tamil Nadu, we are using AI for doing the following. So one is a very simple pest and disease identification system which we have launched, and it has reached about 500,000 farmers, where they can just click a picture of their crop, and the system actually detects or identifies the pest or the disease which is there and suggests a remedial measure, and it goes out to him or to her in form of an SMS saying that use this medicine or spray it by this. Second is we have launched a face recognition system, and a very interesting use case of face recognition system is in the school attendance. So we have piloted it into 2 schools. Every day it takes 45 minutes for the schools to conduct their attendance. Everybody stands in line, the names are called out, and then this is a very simple system, a self-contained edge computing device, doesn't require any sophisticated internet connection or hardware. We built it on a Raspberry Pi. You just take this, put it on the gate or the main entrance of the school. As the children are walking in, the attendance gets taken, and it has been tremendously successful. And I think the government has indicated that it wants to roll it out. They have actually just sanctioned about $3 million to roll it out across the entire Tamil Nadu. So very interesting use case. Now, first use case is different from the second use case in terms of ethics, in terms of risks associated with it. Similarly, yesterday we were evaluating what Sutova was saying, a diabetic retinopathy solution. So we just had RAISE 2020, which is Responsible AI for Social Empowerment. This summit 2020 was just held 2 weeks ago by the government of India, and the Prime Minister of India actually inaugurated it. And it brought experts from about 140 countries to actually participate in this. And actually this brought this AI movement into sharp focus in this country. And there they also held a competition of startups which can actually use AI for exactly these scenarios. So as I said, health, education, agriculture, financial inclusion. And I was very happy to hear there, one of the largest public sector banks said that they are venturing into microcredit using AI, because problem with microcredit is that most of the people do not have digital footprint. Now, those who do not have a digital footprint, there's very little chance of them having a credit history. So how do you actually assess whether they are credit worthy or not? As a result, what happens, there are niche companies which have come about, which are called microfinance companies, and they actually charge somewhere between 18 to 35% interest, which is very high. So large institutional banks have never been able to move into that space because it's very expensive to operate. And this deputy managing director of one of the largest, the largest bank of the country, they said they have actually used AI algorithms to screen out of, I think something like about 5 million people. They have found 1.2 million eligible for microfinancing, and they find them low risk so that they can extend a loan at 8% versus what they were getting at 18 to 35%. So when you have pest and disease identification, there is very little issue of ethics, except for the data has to be gathered in an ethical manner. When you have face recognition system, there's a big question of ethics. When you have financial inclusion, there is a big question of ethics. When you have policing, I mean, if you start using for law enforcement, AI for law enforcement, there's a big question of ethics. And in our policy, which we recently brought out, we have chosen 7 dimensions of ethics of AI. So they are, I mean, it's a very conveniently phrased acronym. It's called Deep Max, and sort of deep learning and Deep Max. So I thought this was a clever naming. So where these are 7 parameters, each one. So D stands for diversity, E for equity and fairness, ethics, privacy and data protection, misuse protection, accountability and explainability, and cross geography applications. So these are 7 parameters. We have thought that every solution which the government rolls out has to make sure that the AI system does not discriminate. For financial inclusion, which I was talking about, and I'll take this last minute and close. What if, because it's basically, if you look at it, AI, it's nothing but a sophisticated pattern recognition algorithm, nothing more than that. I mean, it can be packaged in all kinds of jargon, but essentially at the heart of it, it is this. Now, the question is, it does a great job of pattern matching. So if you have a set of people coming from a particular location, which is disadvantaged or vulnerable, and they have been defaulting in their payments, loan repayments, the system is likely to flag that geographical location as a bad location for giving out loan, which is very, very unfair. It can just associate saying that if you get a loan application from this PIN code, reject, right? So that's why this accountability, explainability, and human in the loop, I think that's very important. I'll talk more about it. I have, and these are the issues which we are grappling with. These are some of the use cases we in India are trying to apply AI to. And we are, of course, looking at some of the leaders like Singapore to learn from your experience and see how best we can deliver ours, how best we can serve our citizens. Thank you, Adam. Sorry for this.
No worries. I think that's actually very good insights you're sharing. You mentioned not only the tying back what to Sutou mentioned, not only in the quest to improve lives, make things easier for the citizens. You know, you have to balance between, it's like cybersecurity, right? You have to balance between ease of access versus how secure you want it, and there must be a balance point. But what I particularly really liked is that you mentioned the human bias aspects of things, which is a big problem because computers are not biased. Everything is either 0 or 1. But many times the people inputting the algorithms, we bring our personal bias into the system. Yeah, so I think that's a very good point when the tie backs to ethics, because sometimes people, by the very fact that it is a bias, you don't realize it, and then it becomes an ethical issue down the line. So that's very interesting sharing. I would like to now direct the question to Ben. Taking what Sutou and Santosh have mentioned, perhaps Ben can share with us how governments are handling cybersecurity and how AI will be driving cybersecurity in such an instance, and of course, any interesting use case to share. Ben?
Right. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, so I think Sutou shared about our national AI strategy. So I'll be sharing more about our Singapore Cybersecurity National Strategy, which was unveiled in 2016 by our Prime Minister. So actually, in the scope of cybersecurity, the Cybersecurity Agency in Singapore is the master planner for this sector. But they actually, work with many communities, many non-profit organizations, many associations to make that work. Because at the end of the day, if we were talking about tech, right, cybersecurity is the foundation of technology. It isn't the gatekeeper, but it is the foundation, because we could create the best AI systems in the world, but if it's not properly secured, our whole system, our whole smart nation will just come crashing down. So I think cybersecurity is a key fundamental of our technological advancement in Singapore. Right. So actually, how the government is handling cybersecurity in this particular era. As I mentioned, I'll be sharing more about our national cybersecurity strategy. There are actually 4 main pillars in this strategy. We have building a resilient infrastructure. We have creating a safer cyberspace. We have developing a vibrant cybersecurity ecosystem, and we have strengthening international partnerships. So I'll be touching a bit more on the third point, which is developing a vibrant cybersecurity ecosystem, because Cybersecurity Singapore ourselves have benefited, or rather we have worked very closely with this particular pillar to develop the future workforce, for Singapore, right? So actually under this pillar, there are actually three more specific areas that the government, covers. And among them, they have this key specific area of establishing a professional workforce of the future. And I think why is that very, very important is because, at the end of the day, we can only automate so much. We still need the human touch at the very end of the day, right? And that is a concern actually, because I think from a study done by ISC Square last year, there actually is about 4 million professionals needed in the cybersecurity space. And 62% actually come from the APAC region alone. And so that's very concerning because, we have a lack of cybersecurity professionals in the industry. And actually there are studies done that showed that, because of this lack of professionals, cyber attacks are, the risk of cyber attacks happening are much higher. Right. So I think what the government has done, in their entire master plan, in their entire strategy for, strengthening Singapore's cyber resilience, is because, at the end of the day, Singapore, we survive because MNCs invest in us. We have, big corporate companies coming to Singapore. In the past, it was, shipping, oil, as we get more and more digitized, right, it expands to the technological space. And for companies to keep investing in us, we have to ensure that our cyberspace is secure, that the infrastructures that they build here, are secure for them and they feel safe, using it. So actually this whole master plan in that sense work towards, securing our nation, making sure that, every single citizen is digitally safe. And, one of the measures that I've personally experienced and personally seen the government doing is, they try to build communities, especially in the tech area. They try to build organic communities from the ground, that can run the industry in the future. I think this is a very, very good play in terms of sustainability, because once you have a good, you have a good community, you have a good association running the industry, it's the organic growth is more sustainable. The scaling up of the industry, is much easier, and when the industry is becoming very self-driven with little government interference, it's much easier to push forward, advance our technological research, and technology now in our economy as a whole, right? So actually, with the government support, Cybersecurity Singapore ourselves, we have reached out to about 2,000 youths this year. As we're coming to the end of the year, we have reached out to about 2,000 youth, educate them on a possibility of a career in technology. And for those who are already in this career path, for those who are already in courses in polytechnic and universities, that specifically studies technology, we in a sense we researched and we tried to find out ways to value add these people, right? Because I think as AI technology replace more mundane tasks, there's more value that can be added to the human being. Yeah, so we were able to host programs like the Youth Cyber Exploration Program with the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. So we basically brought cybersecurity foundational education to 13 to 16-year-old youths in Singapore, encourage them to explore this area of technology. And of course, we were able to hold self-development workshops for youths entering pre-tertiary education, to prepare them to value add their in that sense their whole tech capability. Right. So I think the second question that Adam asked was how AI will drive cybersecurity. And I think that's actually a very interesting question because cybersecurity has been around for quite some time. I think very long ago, hackers started off as pranksters. Right. They created the first virus was a prank. Right. But I think AI with AI coming up recently, I think it will fundamentally change how we work. I think totally, not only in terms of cybersecurity, but every aspect of our economy, of our way of life, and cybersecurity is not spared from that. So I'm not sure if is everyone aware, that in cybersecurity we have something called a Security Operations Center. It's basically a center where the analyst in there monitors threats to an organization, and we have something called a SOC Tier 1 operator. So this task is in that sense is quite mundane because the person just stares at the screen and flags out any anomalies. And these are the kind of tasks that can be replaced with AI very, very easily, right? And we can in that sense channel and re-channel people to more value-added tasks, right? And I think if we talk about AI driving cybersecurity, there's two sides of the coin. Right? We have the defense, we have the offensive side. Of course, on the defensive aspect, AI will definitely help a lot of the defense. It will definitely allow us to better understand and detect cyber threats. So I'm going to raise an example. About a few years ago, we had a major attack on our SingHealth system, where a lot of our citizens, personal medical health data was retrieved, illegally from our system, including our Prime Minister. So I think, Suto will correct me if I'm wrong, but the main cause, or rather the main, the lack, or the gap in this particular attack was the human reaction, was the reaction time and the response time of the attack. Right? If it was shortened in the sense where people reported it earlier, we wouldn't have, rather the impact of the scale of the consequences wouldn't be that large. And I think, just imagine, right, if these responders were replaced by artificial intelligence, we wouldn't have that gap anymore. I think just one of the panelists mentioned, there is that human biasness, or that human factor involved that can slow down things, can create more unnecessary human errors in between the solution and the problem. Right, so AI will definitely help us augment endpoint detection, help us augment our response time, the way we detect, understand cyber threats, the way we respond even. Yeah, so I think AI definitely helps the defense. Definitely is an understatement. But the scary side of the picture is that AI can also be used by the attackers. I think what people like to always think about is we can always use AI to augment our defense. Right, but we seldom think that so you seldom remember that actually the attacker has also access to AI, and that gives birth to something we call adversarial AI. It's not really an attack we have seen much in the wild, but it is a technology that is up and coming, where the complexity, the scale, and the types of attack will increase drastically in ways it will be hard for a human to keep up, and that's when we need an AI to defend against an AI. So I really look forward to that future, and hopefully my generation grows into that, and we get to see that, because it'll be scary but interesting. Yeah. So I think another question that Adam asked was how any interesting use case that AI has to strengthen detection and response. I think currently, right now, one of the most interesting use cases that I've seen AI being applied in cybersecurity is probably UBA, user behavioral analysis. I think this is a really good technology, although not perfect yet, right? Yeah, it's still under development. It is really good to defend against insider threats and social engineering attacks. And I think insider threats and social engineering attacks are one of the hardest in cybersecurity to defend against, because the variable you're playing with is the human. It's not a system anymore. Right? A system you can upgrade it, you can purchase it, you can augment it, but there's only so much, right? You can educate a human being. And no matter how much education you do, if the person still doesn't listen to you, then we have no choice, right? But UBA, it's a very, very interesting technology in the sense that it's able to flag out and raise out anomalies, in a sense where in normal organization, right? If HR personnel, right, he or she is supposed to be maintaining certain tasks and certain tasks only. If let's say one day this HR personnel started accessing financial records of the company, the UBA will be able to trigger that and flag it as an anomaly, like, hey, why is a HR personnel accessing financial records? Right? That is something that shouldn't be happening. So it's either two cases of possibility, right? It's either this HR personnel is an insider threat. He or she is a malicious user. He's trying to sabotage the company by retrieving financial records. Or the second use case, it could be this HR personnel's computer or machine is being compromised by an external attacker or external threat actor, and that person is using the actor is using this person's PC or machine to launch pivoting attacks into the internal network. So there are a few use cases that can result from the detection, but the point of the end of the day is UBA will introduce a new layer of defense. In the past, we will only know we will only know if a social engineering attack is successful or if an insider threat is successful after the damage is done, because this is almost impossible to detect. Right? If an insider threat knows your company's system, your organization system, he or she can do whatever they want, right? With almost little to almost no detection. But with UBA in force, right, 24 hours a day, with AI managing it, right, it's able to learn, study every single employee's activities, right, and to be able to flag out, if this particular person is doing something out of the norm, right? Yeah. So I think back to you, Adam. Right.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think that's a great sharing some of the aspects. To be honest, there was a few points that it didn't even occur to me, but it makes sense after you connected the dots. Yeah, so that was very useful. So gathering from our group of panelists, I made a few points. So in our quest to transform lives, making things easier for our citizens, including ourselves, and with AI, to do this, it will transform many aspects, the way we do work, the way we think, the way we approach certain aspects of life, work, etc. And of course, AI can take away some of the repetitive, mundane items, which interestingly is the promise for the advent of computers. That's what we've been talking about since the age of computerization. It's supposed to take away repetitive stuff, the mundane stuff. Of course, AI makes it better. So this is tying back to the point Santosh made. AI in all its glory is a pattern recognition algorithm, which is to a certain extent is actually correct. Yeah. By removing the human weakness, if you will, there's no more fatigue. Because I didn't have a good night rest, I couldn't monitor my system properly, or didn't have a quarrel with someone affecting my emotion, etc. Take all those human weakness away, and it becomes a better, more efficient machine. And to achieve that grand utopia that we're trying to work towards, there must be a few components. And I don't know if you guys will agree with me, definitely the infrastructure must be there. Not just the physical infrastructure, but also the platforms. These days we talk about platforms being the major aspects of things. It's not enough to just put on equipment, networks, and what have you. You must have a platform that everybody participates in. And of course, the cybersecurity aspects of it, which is still infrastructure to a large extent. You have to protect these investments, these essential services, if you will. Now, to do that, we need talent. And so To actually mentioned that in our AI initiative in Singapore, one of the key aspects is building talent. This is echoed by Santosh and echoed by Ben. It's actually one of the few common aspects that everyone talk about talent. We have to build these capabilities, right? And there's a few ways to do it. Community, a sense of community is driven from the actual real life setting as opposed to government mandates. Although government guidance is needed, this is where the policies comes in. There must be an overarching framework and of course training. Now with that, this is where I'll let the pose my next question to all the panelists. Have you guys encountered any form of challenges in doing this? Because in all honesty, this is not a simple task. When we're discussing about it, we have to do this, bit of community, do some training. It's easy to say. Actual implementation where you have to involve humans and change management across large scales, like in Santosh, Tamil Nadu, there is a huge geographical region. It's not something that you can go and say, we're going to do this, and therefore you guys are going to do it. So, maybe you would like to share some challenges you have faced and how you have, in your setting, managed to overcome these challenges. Yeah. Maybe, Suto, you'd like to start?
Yep, sure. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so you have alluded to one of the crux of the issue, which is around people, right? If I can I'll put our attention back to healthcare, where I am right now. We've successfully conducted actually many AI pilots in healthcare. To scale beyond the pilot, there are a lot of enablers that we need to put in place, a lot of changes that needs to be introduced. One of them is to change the clinical workflow and to be able to deploy AI models into the clinical systems. And very often the challenge, as you have pointed out, it's not technology, it is the change management. In healthcare, where human lives are at stake, clinicians want to do very extensive testing of the AI algorithm and make sure that every one of the components actually works well before deployment. And of course, any changes to the clinical workflow will also have to be scrutinized for patient safety impact. I don't think we can scale very successfully if we rely too much on either what I call ops pull or tech push. What do I mean by that? Because if you are relying entirely on clinicians coming to you and say that, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to use AI for this, they may not necessarily be the people who actually know what's the art of possible when it comes to technology, because they themselves may not be very familiar. And on the other hand, if you rely too much on tech push, meaning technology people coming in and telling clinicians what to do, that's also wrong, because ultimately it's really about what are the things that will be helpful to the clinicians. So I think it's important for us to look at the balance between ops and tech, which is why I think it's important to have a multidisciplinary team comprising clinicians, even administrators, because sometimes some of the pain points are actually on the administrative side, may not be on the clinical side, and also the technology experts coming together. So I think one key aspect of this really is getting change management correct. And that also means then that getting everybody to come together from different disciplines so that then we can solve this problem together.
Actually, I can totally understand what you're referring to. This is part of my daily life when I implement projects. Even now, I still do projects as part of National University's Singapore initiative. So yeah, very useful insight. I'm going to borrow some phrase when I go to my next meetings: ops pull and tech push. Right. All right. So maybe I'll turn the questions to now Santosh. So maybe you'd like to share some of the challenges you face in your implementation. And it should be interesting because you have a huge geographical region and cutting across almost every aspect of the UN development goals. So Santosh, please.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. I think it's a large area and a big population. We have a population of about 80 million. And it's always a challenge to roll out a system at scale. And Sutovo referred to it, and I think just like, so if you look at AI, there are multiple challenges which exist. And I think the first one is actually for us is also availability of clean data. And in one of the very famous talks during the National AI Summit, which we just had, RAISE 2020, Vala Afshar, he said, data is not the new oil, but data is like water, and everybody needs clean water. And I couldn't agree with that statement more, because this is a challenge. So when we set out to develop this agriculture pest and disease identification system, we found it's very hard to have the good quality pest images. That data exists in very, very tiny fragments spread all across, and the quality is not at all uniform. And that was a big challenge, because you need good amount of data to train your system to deliver something which is significant. Otherwise, I mean, it will be full of too many errors. So first challenge, of course, was to crowdsource data, which we did. And today we'll be not even the agriculture universities. I think we as TNEJ will be the largest repository of pest images today. So that's one challenge. And then you rightly talked about platform. I think having a common platform which can actually be made accessible to everyone, so that everybody understands the language and everybody understands the goals and objectives, and everybody understands the meaning, underlying meaning of what is happening. So that's the next serious challenge which we have. And it also reflects upon capacity building. And when we talk about capacity building, it's not about only communities. It's about all the three arms of government need to know about it. So whether it is judiciary, which has to tomorrow, step in to resolve disputes arising out of AI decisions. You need to have legislature, which they have to regulate. AI has to be regulated, because when the human life is involved, when law enforcement is involved, when medical use cases are involved, when autonomous decision-making machines are involved, you have to regulate them. And once you regulate them, you need to have a fundamental understanding of this technology, so that you don't, while regulating, you don't strangulate it. It's extremely important. These are fragile innovations, and they can actually get choked very easily if you go overboard. At the same time, there has to be a fine balance between regulation and allowing the innovation to flourish. So that's the data, platform, capacity building of all three organs, including he was referring to administrative hassles. So I think, so same thing, executive, legislature, and judiciary, all three need to be speaking the same language and understanding the same language. And then, of course, community capacity building, which also involves trust. So suppose you have, for example, we have these cases where we have a serious shortage of radiologists. So you have machines which do CT scan everywhere. However, radiologists are not so easy to find, particularly in non-urban and hinterlands. So if you have come up with a system which actually does detection of internal bleeding in the brain based on a CT scan which is fed to it, would the patient family agree with the machine analysis that this is not a serious case, please let him rest here, he will be or she will be all right by tomorrow morning, you don't really need a medical intervention, you don't need a supervisory specialist care? Would the patient family agree to the machine analysis of a case which belongs to their near and dear ones?
You have to be very convincing.
You have to be very convincing, exactly. Second is, do you actually, what about the doctors or the people who are in the system? Would they trust the triaging done by the system? So that trust building is important. And for doing that, I think explainability, which is accountability and explainability, I mean, that is extremely, extremely important. So that's where that deep max framework, which I was referring to, it becomes very handy. And these are the challenges which we have to counter one after another, and before you can actually successfully roll it out over a large geography or over a large segment of population. So far, AI solutions, as Sutovo was saying, have been rolled out in mostly pilot modes. Of course, we have just rolled out a natural language processing chatbot, which we are now hoping to upgrade to a voice interface, because that's another pet topic of mine, is that the keyboard is actually a barrier to technology inclusion. So keyboard is an exclusionary device. The moment you have a technology which requires usage of keyboard, you are immediately throwing out, and particularly I'm talking about Indian context, you are throwing out at least 30 to 50% of the population out of that. You're shutting them out of your system. So can you make these systems inclusive by using, so we are seriously attempting removing this keyboard barrier and putting a voice interface for all government services. So inclusion is something which I think AI can actually help us with. And also it can actually meet out some of the challenges which I have outlined.
Very useful sharing. Thank you so much. And I guess the last bit I'll direct it to Ben. Perhaps you can just quickly share about some of the challenges you have encountered so far and some of the solutions. Yeah.
Right. I think we're speaking about transforming AI, implementing AI, solutions. As Sutovo and Santosh has mentioned, they have both raised the challenges faced by the consumers or the users of the application. As Sutovo mentioned, change management. I think as AI transform the way we live and we work. I think just now Adam mentioned also that talent, is a common key variable that we all have to focus on. I think, and it's very, very important that we prepare these talents and this future workforce to enter the workforce equipped not with yesterday's skills and yesterday's, knowledge, but with the tools and the skills needed to function tomorrow with tomorrow's technology. So I think what I do, a lot is I lobby a lot and I campaign a lot for, the professionals of the future, which is our youth right now, to not only have strong technical skills, because with AI being advanced, it will definitely elevate the quality of work. Right? We will do away with all the mundane jobs and repetitive tasks. we will not have needs for that anymore. But that, increases the need for our human beings to be more, in touch with each other in that sense, where we have to be, it is important, for us to be able to communicate effectively because, the world around us is being so digitized. And it's important for us to communicate properly, for us to understand the digital world around us. Right? So I think on top of technical skills, our professionals of the future, have to work on soft skills, like critical thinking with good foresight, right? Being able to communicate their ideas, express their ideas properly across. I think that the main problem, the main challenge that I see, or rather we have noticed in our youth today, is especially those in tech. Right? They're really intelligent. They're really smart. They can generate chunks of codes for you, and they can program the best AI system, being able to recognize pattern at like crazy speed, right? But they are unable to explain what their solution does to you effectively. Right? They're able to create a very good solution, but they're unable to communicate, what their solution solves to you. And I think that's a very concerning problem, because there'll be a gap between the consumers and the developers, as everyone has mentioned, the change management point of view. If we do not communicate the effective way to use the technology properly, the change will be inefficient. There's no point to it. It will defeat the whole purpose of creating technology in the first place. Right? So I think that the communication is key, and we have to build more than just technical skills. Right?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I always believe that with everything in life, and I really mean everything in life, communication is the key. There's so many misunderstandings due to the fact that we have cultural differences. When we say something, the way we interpret cross-cultural, even sometimes it could be just coming from different sectors. The way we communicate may be interpreted differently. So I think that's important. Communication is a very important element that we need. Looking at the time, actually we overrun it by a minute or two, so I have to wrap up, or else the moderator is going to come after me. So with that, I think it has been a very interesting session. We actually have indeed covered a huge holistic scope in the area over the topic. And to be honest, I would love to continue the conversation. They should make panels 2 hours. I don't know why they only have 45 minutes, but it is what it is, and we should not delay the other panels that's still about to commence. So with that, I thank all of you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation in one capacity or another at a later date. Thank you. Over to you both now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Santosh. And thank you so much, Sutovo, for joining us today. Thank you for your valuable time.